Vienna, July 2014. Rahat Aliyev is arrested by the Austrian authorities. A criminal case is open. The former son-in-law of the president of Kazakhstan, Nazarbayev, could get a sentence of 20 years of prison for the alleged kidnapping and murder of two Nurbank bankers, Jordan Timur-Aliyev and Aybar Kashenov. I will fly to Kazakhstan and try to reconstruct the events that happened in January 2007 and are described in details in the indictment issued by the Austrian prosecutors. The court proceedings tell of a criminal who starts a corporate raiding campaign, abusing the unlimited power endorsed to him by his status of Chief of the Tax Police, Deputy Chief of the KNV State Security Service and First Vice Foreign Minister. The gruesome operations culminated in 2007 with the murder of two bankers in connection with Nurbanka, one of Aliyev's numerous property. As charges relate, at a board meeting on January 18, 2007, Aliyev asked Gilimov and Timur-Aliyev to accompany him on a trip to Kiev for the purchase of a bank and insurance company. The two executives went home to pack and then, on Gilimov's car, drove towards the airport.
This is the main road that leads to the airport of Almaty. On their way there, the two bankers received a phone call from Aliyev's accomplice saying that the plane had been delayed and they had to go to a nearby sauna and sport complex inside one of the governmental residences.
It was here that the first ordeal took place. Gilimov was brought into a guest room of the complex, handcuffed and prevented from leaving. Timur-Aliyev was led into a training room and handcuffed to a training device. Aliyev forced Timur-Aliyev to phone Abdullayev, the owner of the Kendala building, and demanded him to hand it over to him. By holding a gun against Timur-Aliyev's head and beating him violently, Rahat Aliyev attempted to get information concerning the identity of Nurbank credit holders and the commercial evolution regarding the Kendala office building. According to the charges, the two bank executives were also forced under a death threat to resign from their Nurbank positions. Should they refuse, they would be buried and stamps would be put in their passports to make it look as if they disappeared in Ukraine. During the detention, the two bank executives were beaten, given stupefying substances, and had their hair shaven as a sign of humiliation and inferiority. In the evening of the 19th of January, the two executives are released. They decide not to report the case to the police, thinking that that was a single event and that soon things would be sorted out without any external aid. On the 22nd of January, a board meeting of Nurbanka took place in the Kendala offices in the presence of Aliyev, Gilimov and Timur-Aliyev. The two latter abandoned their positions and abstained from their interest in the bank. But what was really going on at Nurbanka? According to the charges, Aliyev was planning to sell the bank, yet audits had revealed that numerous loans were granted to enterprises linked to the bank insiders such as Timur-Aliyev and Gilimov. As a consequence, Aliyev concluded that his partners were building up an empire with Nurbanka credits and enriching themselves on his expenses. He was of the opinion that everything that was financed by his bank belonged to him.
This is Kendala Business Center. Back in 2007, on the 9th floor of this building, some of Nurbank offices were located. Well, Aliyev managed to extort this whole building to its previous owner, Abdullayev, at much lower prices than the market value. How did he do it? Well, according to the prosecution, through intimidation and abuse of power.
In this same building, the second ordeal began on January 31st. Timur Aliyev is summoned by Aliyev at Nurbank offices in the Kandala building. This time, with him is called another Nurbank employee, Aybar Kasenov, head of the management and trade department. Aliyev and his accomplice Kashlyak met the two bankers with the aim to force an acknowledgement out of them concerning the funds and assets allegedly obtained with Nurbank loans. Kasenov arrived at 1 p.m. and Timur Aliyev at 3. They were brought into different rooms on the 9th floor of the building. Timur Aliyev was conducted to a conference room where he met Aliyev and Kashlyak, who treated him the same way Kasenov was treated a few hours before. Early in the morning, Aliyev had ordered one of his assistants to drive to the Kandala building and wait for a call, as something needed to be transported. They firstly asked him to write a confession concerning the loans, yet as he was not cooperative enough, they started to beat, kick and threaten him. Eventually, Timur Aliyev wrote down something which yet did not satisfy Aliyev. At this point, the two prisoners were ordered to dress working overalls, then they had their heads covered with hats, they were drugged and finally were driven away from the buildings. First, they were driven to one of Aliyev's villa. From there, the decision was taken to bring the two bankers to the village of Koldi, some kilometers far from Almaty.
After the Kandala building events, the two bankers were brought here to what back in 2007 was the Agrotex company, an enterprise which belonged to Rahat Aliyev's father, Mukhtar. The two bankers were kept hostage for a few days. They were interrogated, beaten, threatened to death and drugged.
In the meantime, outside, their wives turned to Nazarbayev, to whom in desperation begged for help. Knowing this, Aliyev forced the two prisoners to call their wives and tell them they were escaping from the financial police. Yet this did not resolve the issue, which degenerated on the 9th of February, when the two executives were killed, according to the charges, by administering paralyzing and stupefying substances and then by strangling them. The evidence was then burned on the site.
We were brought here by the investigator who followed the Rahat Aliyev's case. He told us that this is the exact place where the two bodies were buried and then found. In this place, in 2007, there was a debris disposal which belonged to Aliyev's accomplice, Kashlyak. They had excavators and metal drums. With the excavator, they dug a huge hole in this place, and then took two of these metal drums, put the bodies inside them and then into the hole, and then with the same excavators they recovered everything with soil.
A few days after the double murder, Aliyev was appointed ambassador of Kazakhstan in Austria. Yet this attempt of diverting attention did not succeed. The public pressure against Aliyev increased to such an extent that proceedings were initiated in Kazakhstan and ended with a sentence in absentia of 20 years of imprisonment.
Only 4 years later, in 2011, investigations against Aliyev started in Austria. Testimonies were interviewed, evidence discovered, DNA tests on the bodies of the two executives were made, and the murder accusations were confirmed.
The trial was ready to start when an unexpected plot twist occurred. On the 24th of February 2015, Aliyev was found dead in the cell of his Vienna prison. According to the official, he committed suicide by hanging himself.